Thank you, Barbara. This is a special treat with you here today. Thank you. We actually did invent a word of an authorism for 450th birthday or 450th anniversary, sesquiquadracentennial. And we did that. I did that by going to the editor-in-chief at Merriam-Webster, and they got the staff at the Merriam-Webster Dictionary Company to come up with a name for 450th. So whether that makes it in the dictionary or not, at least it made it in my book, and now it's on it will be shown elsewhere. This whole business of what gets in and what doesn't get in is a fascinating subject, because a lot of time, Aaron McKean once said about words that words are just simply a piece of communication, an element of communication, and that just because it's not in the dictionary doesn't mean it's not a word. And she used to say that you don't need a pedigree to be a dog. And so that's sort of the way to look at it. But and one thing I find is really interesting is a lot of writers will, especially contemporary writers, love to create their own words. My favorite example is Calvin Trillin, the humorist and New Yorker writer and bon vivant. And Trillin actually created a couple words which are given full credit for. Wonky is one, and the other is the buffalo chicken wings, which were called before that spicy chicken wings. And then when he wrote a book called Alice, Let's Eat, they became buffalo chicken wings because he first had them in Buffalo, New York, when he was on a sort of a pilgrimage about food. The guy that's really sort of funny to me is, when I was doing research on this book, I found that Sinclair Lewis would invent words and then he'd send off letters to Merriam-Webster, where I'd done some work, and the letters are in files up there, and he would come up with a word like, one of his great words he thought he had created was teetotalitarian, for people who were the dries during Prohibition. And then he had philanthroper, which is a robber baron that gave a lot of money to good things. And his favorite was Kiplingo, which was for the overblown sort of purple language of Rudyard Kipling. And of course, Kipling had just some really amazing words. Kipling in the book one of his is the horrible racism, but which was carried for many years, white man's burden. That was Kipling, and that was his example of how what a kind of person he was. But he also, on the brighter side, he invented the word rookie, which was a corruption of recruit, and recruit didn't rhyme for him, so rookie went in instead. But the thing about Lewis was, sort of to his chagrin, the two words that he is credited with are, of course, Babbitt, a character in him for a sort of a Philistine, with money and no appreciation of the finer things in life, and the arts and such. And of course, and Shotgun Wedding first appears in the writings of Sinclair Lewis. He needed a name for sort of a forced wedding in a rural setting, so Shotgun Wedding made it in. I tried a bunch of words that I probably tried about 100, and only 2 have stuck to the wall. Maybe authorisms will stick, because that was created for this one. There's a phenomenon in English called a contrastive focus reduplication. That means if you say, was he talking about a book or a book? Meaning, is he talking about a physical book or an e-book or something? Or is he talking about grass or grass, and meaning the difference between marijuana and lawn clippings. So one time I wrote in a book, I called these words, and now I've completely knocked contrastive focus reduplication out of the dictionary, and it's now in the newest edition of the Oxford Companion in English Literature. It is in there as a form of speech, word. So it's. So if you go and send some mail, or some mail, email, so that's what that's called. But another one I created, which with the help of some dictionary people, was demonym for place of the noun for or an adjective for a person or a place where a person comes from, like Liverpudlian for somebody from Liverpool. You're Washingtonian, Hoosier for somebody from Indiana, not Indiana. So that was, and that sort of seems to be sticking. But the Oxford English Dictionary, a lot of people use that as the final arbiter of whether you've created a word or not. And it's interesting, if you go to the Oxford English Dictionary, I'm credited with 3 first uses, which means the Oxford English Dictionary says I was the first one to use it in the English language. Now they're fairly dubious. One I'm credited with is water picked as a verb, and in a little piece of fiction I once wrote, I said that so-and-so woke up in the morning and water picked his teeth, and somehow they've laid that one on me, and I have no responsibility for it. They also laid on me Strangelovian, an adjective for, pertaining to the world of Dr. Strangelove, women, the whole Dr. Strangelove phenomenon, and so Strangelovian, and then there's another one for a body part turned into a verb, which I'll probably not mention here, given the cameras are rolling, but and this goes out to a family audience, and I'm credited with that, and it wasn't mine either. But my favorite one is Phyllis Richmond is an old friend of mine who is a writer. She was the food editor of the Washington Post for many years, and she is now hounded by the fact that she is credited worldwide with creating the word comfort, or the phrase comfort food. And we had lunch one day to discuss this subject. Of course, she was eating macaroni and cheese or some comfort food as we spoke. And she said she didn't invent it. She said it was all over the food industry when she wrote it in 1977 piece in the Post magazine. She talked about some restaurant specializing in comfort food, which was, bacon, lettuce, tomato sandwiches, and things made with ice cream and such. Things that were not high cuisine, rather they were the kind of cuisine you ate when you were feeling out of sorts. But she did say at lunch, and she's really adamant about this, that the one word she did create was elekonandros. Elekonandros is a word she said she started using in high school, and she'd put it in paper. She used it all through college, and she occasionally threw it into a column. And it was an adjective that really meant nothing, but she said nobody ever challenged her on it. So elekonandros, and she wants me to do everything I can to make sure that elekonandros gets going. What got me going on this thing was interesting. The Oxford English Dictionary, now that it's digitized, you can now sort of set it up to look for what you want. So there was one way I could look through the Oxford English Dictionary and find out who were the great word creators. In other words, who created the most words. And in terms of first use, but also first use often reflects, it's not a given, but it's a strong suggestion that that's where the term came from, because they've spent over 100 years trying to determine where it first appears in print. What's really interesting was I ran into sort of who the great creators were of language. And the number one was Shakespeare, but number two was Sir Walter Scott. And I said, what about Sir Walter Scott? And I got really sort of fascinated by Scott. And I came to this really sort of beginning conclusion that what Scott did was create this world, a world of chivalry and nobility and the lost causes, and a world in which there were clans with a K. And what he was creating was a world that had words in it like freelance. And there were words in it like back of beyond, or phrases. And I got fascinated. And then I stumbled upon something very interesting, which is in Mark Twain, in Life in the Mississippi, attacks Scott. And one of the things he later admits is that one of the reasons he wrote Connecticut Yankee in King Arthur's Court was to mock the world that Scott had created. And Twain goes almost overboard in this, but Twain believed that Scott had created a world, or a nobility to death, a nobility of lost causes, a nobility of dying, the graceful and courageous death that was a proximate cause of the Civil War. And Twain goes on for paragraphs showing why he thinks that the popularity of Scott, especially in the South, was that powerful. And it rings true only in one sense. The power of Scott was amazing. I live in Garrett Park, Maryland, and the man who started the town, who was Garrett of the B&O Railroad, named the town was set up like a feudal village originally, and every street and every physical aspect of the town is from the novels of Sir Walter Scott. And of course, Scott created this world with characters like Robin Hood and the Sheriff of Nottingham, and of course Ivanhoe and